Up until the age of 14, I lived in Michigan. I lived in the St. Joseph area, if anyone's familiar with it. Anyway, my grandparents lived in the northern areas of Michigan. We would regularly make the 4 or 5 hour drive and go visit them, either on the way to our lake house, which was a little further north, or just to see them. They lived in the middle of nowhere. You know, one of those 25 minutes to town sort of things. Both of their neighbors were a mile in each direction, and their property is huge. They lived in a small trailer in the middle of the property. They had 2 pastures to each side of the property, and in the back, they had miles of trails that would take you through the woods. My grandfather usually used this for hunting. Anyway, I was hitting golf balls from the front of the house into the pasture. I hit all my balls and went to go collect them. I opened the gate and shut it behind me so none of the dogs could get through, and I walked around picking up balls. A couple of them went further than normal, so I had to walk back behind the pasture area and into the woods. As I was walking, I could hear leaves being crunched, but they were a little off from my steps. I kept hearing this weird noise coming from behind me, kind of like a watery sound. But it was like someone just got out of the shower and they were dripping wet. But this noise kept stopping and starting, so I just thought it was the wind blowing water out of the trees. I found my last ball and turned around to start walking back, and I saw a tall form move behind a tree. I could tell it was taller than me, but didn't really know what it was. Now, being from Michigan, we've got our fair share of scary animals that would love to take a bite out of your ass, but this was definitely not a wolf and could not have been a bear. So I just kind of stood there frozen, just looking at the tree and bushes this thing was near. And after a while, it started to emerge. It crawled out on its hands and legs first. It had these crazy skinny arms which were followed by its head. It looked up and around and finally looked at me. It crawled the rest of the way out, and I could see the whole thing. Like I said, it had skinny arms like it hadn't eaten in a while. Dark looking skin that had a shine to it like it was slimy almost. The body was just like a mass of flesh. It didn't even look to have a stomach or chest. It was just kind of twisted up and deformed. Its legs were just as long and fucked up looking as its arms, and both the thing's feet and hands were elongated. Not massively or anything, but you could damn sure tell it was longer than your average foot or hand. Its head was the part I have a really hard time pinpointing down. It had eyes, no hair, a long mouth that wouldn't open. Its nose was just 2 holes, and it had a very long, exaggerated chin, but in another kind of way it looked normal. It stared at me, and without opening its mouth made sounds that I've been hearing, which seemed to be made by its nose as its nostrils flared. It started to walk around. Not in my direction, but just around where it was. Then it stood up on 2 legs. It was probably 6.5 feet tall, but its look and appearance made it look a hell of a lot scarier. The thing moved its neck in an unnatural way, and then it looked at me. It was only about 25 yards away, way too close for comfort, but I was not about to move and have this creature charge me. And then, all of a sudden, the damn thing bolts right at me. I opened my eyes wide and just prepared myself, but it ran right by me and through the woods. I turned around to make sure, and it just kept running, sometimes on all 4s, sometimes on 2 legs. Its gait both ways was unnatural. Its body contorted and just looked off. I ran my ass out of that pasture, shut the gate behind me, and didn't look back. I didn't tell my grandparents right away, but a couple of months later I told them. This was the summer of 1975. I didn't tell them until about the fall of that year. My grandfather pulled me aside after I told him and asked me what it looked like exactly. I told him, and he said he'd seen it before out on the trails. He didn't say any more about it, but he told me not to be worried. Now, I haven't really told anyone but family and close friends about this, but I guess that's all changed now. This really messed me up for a while. The scary thing, too, is that I saw it later on, several times. Different places, never at my home, but in places up north, even at the lake cabin about an hour away from my grandparents. I have no idea what the damn thing was. And the truth is, I don't really think I want to know.